I've been thinking a lot about our generation and where we're at, and really comes to the conclusion that despite all our amazing charismatic movements and all our Jesus talk, that we're probably living in the true spiritual dark ages. It might sound like a bit of a radical statement, but I actually really believe that future generations will look back on ours and say they had a form of godliness but denied its power. And I'd like to just chat over a few weeks, months, and just unpack that a bit. But just to start off with one small illustration is that if we could measure goodness by speed, and presuming you are an amazing person, we lived at the speed of light. We know that light goes around the world 5 times in 1 second. Phenomenal. And say you live for 70 years at the speed of light, you'd cover a huge distance. Well, I would cover a huge distance. But firstly, we know none of us live at the speed of light anyway. But that aside for a moment, presuming we did. It seems tremendous, the 70 years at the speed of light, how far we'd go. Until we start looking at the galaxies in the universe, and we realize that our universe, 100,000 light years across, 70 years is not even a blip on that graph. And then you take our universe is just one of billions, and you realize that God's goodness, His passion, His holiness, His love is the equivalent to those billions of galaxies and universes. And that our little 70 years, you can't even measure it. Yet, somehow, in our generation, and I'll unpack it a bit as we go, but I believe we really come with our little 70 years and we think it's significant, we think it's worth something. And we make a huge error of rejecting this phenomenal free gift that's on the table. It's Jesus Christ, His righteousness, given to us as a gift. All we've got to do is take it. Paul says an interesting thing in 1 Timothy 1, he says he has a saying that deserves full acceptance, that he is the worst of sinners. Sounds fascinating when you line him up against the radicals, what we would think are the most radical sinners of our generation. But if you look at it a little bit more carefully, you start to realize Paul was the most righteous human being in any generation to have lived, in his own strength, the most righteous. And he put most of his hope in that. He was the right breeding, the Hebrew of Hebrews. He was, with regards to legalistic righteousness, faultless. With regards to zeal, he was passionate. But it's interesting, because he put so much hope in his own goodness, he ended up being the most alienated from Jesus. Because it says in Galatians that those of us who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. So Paul, by trying to justify himself by his own goodness, ended up being the most alienated from Jesus. And therefore, he was the worst of sinners. I really believe that now. And because he was the worst of sinners, God, through His amazing goodness, chose him to show grace. So I'd really like us just to chat about it a bit and look forward, but it's my belief that we haven't even started to get the tip of the iceberg in terms of accepting Jesus' amazingly good gift to us. And we're still caught up in the yeast and the rubbish of trying to do our own stuff.
Grace rising, let it fill the earth. Grace rising.